Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Lovell Netball. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hello everyone and welcome to our Netball World Cup 2023 coverage.
This episode is a recording of a live podcast from Saturday 29th of July featuring former England Roses legend Karen Atkinson, recently retired international umpire Michelle Phippard and former England Rose and Netball Super League stalwart Lindsay Keable.
Firstly, we discuss the teams competing in Group E at the Netball World Cup, which are the teams that finished at the bottom of their respective pools. Following this, we look at the countries outside of the top 5 in terms of world rankings who advanced to the preliminary 2 stage before taking a closer look at the top 5 nations. Finally, we discuss the new changes to the netball rules which will come into effect from January 2024 and how this will impact international competition going forwards.
Here's our full conversation. Happy listening.
So, Luce, the Netball World Cup is here, and as you know, I simply could not be more excited.
Oh, mate, tell me about it. It's the biggest event of the netball calendar, and what better way to show your support for the Roses than by heading to lovellnetball.co.uk and picking yourself up some of the Roses fanwear.
Oh, of course. And I actually have this, this is a bit embarrassing, but I have this weird superstition that when I watch England play, I have to be wearing some kind of kit, like a top or a hoodie or something. Otherwise, I convince myself that if they don't win, it was all my fault.
Oh my God, that is literally insane. But at least you and our listeners can get 15% off at lovellnetball.co.uk with the code NETPOD15 until the end of August.
Amazing. Happy shopping, guys. Luce, before we get started,
hello.
How are you doing?
I'm loving life right now. Like, genuinely, I'm absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like we've died and gone to heaven, to be honest.
Netball heaven.
Yeah, it's pretty great here. We are, of course, over in Cape Town and just loving life, really. So I hope you've all been following along on our Instagram stories. We've been bringing you some post-match interviews and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, that's been really great. But yeah, just a big welcome, everyone, to our first live podcast of the Netball World Cup 2023. Of course, we're recording this live from Cape Town. It is Sunday the 30th of July in the evening, UK time, and the preliminaries have just wrapped up, so we know who will be advancing to the next stage. So before we introduce our star-studded panel and dive into a few questions, Luce, what are your key takeaways from the competition so far?
Oh my God, how to narrow them down. I have to say the vibe and the atmosphere here is like nothing I've ever experienced before. I was just in the arena for the South Africa-Jamaica game and genuinely could not even hear myself speak. Like every single pass, every single goal was being celebrated like it was a buzzer beater in a gold medal match. It was absolutely phenomenal to witness in person. Really enjoying the performances of all the teams overall. I think Fiji have been a real storyline for this Netball World Cup. They're kind of like the Zimbabwe of 2023. They kind of burst onto the scene, the underdog story, which is fantastic. And yeah, there's so many standout performances.
Yeah, I think it's that underdog come good thing that everyone just loves to get behind. So yeah, we will touch on Fiji, of course, a little bit later. And just a few housekeeping bits before we get into it with our panel. So as we've mentioned, this space is being recorded for any netball fans who aren't able to listen live, and it will be released as a bonus episode just after the World Cup, along with our 2 other live podcasts which are coming out. If you want to send in some questions or comments, please tweet us at Qtr Time Pod. Luce is going to be monitoring that, and we'll be using the hashtag NWC2023. So please do share your thoughts, questions, comments, musings, opinions, whatever, and we'll try to shout out as many of them as possible. And finally, as always, the athletes and coaches that we're talking about are real people, and they have real feelings, and they may also listen to this pod live or on playback. So please do bear that in mind with any comments or thoughts that you send in, and be respectful at all times. And now to introduce our amazing guests. That was perfect timing, Karen. Well done. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome former England Rose and Netball Scotland Performance Director Karen Atkinson, former England Rose and recently retired Netball Super League legend Lindsay Keable, and retired international umpire and member of the Rules Advisory Panel, Michelle Phippard. Welcome, everyone. How are you all doing?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. How are you guys?
Very good, Lindsay. How are you, Michelle?
Yeah, well, thank you, guys. How are you?
Yeah, we are absolutely loving life. And Karen, you okay? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm very well, thank you.
Amazing. Well, it is fantastic to have you guys, and we really appreciate you giving up your time on a Sunday evening. Is it Sunday? I've lost track.
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
a Sunday evening. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. So in today's conversation, we're going to firstly take a look at the teams who will be competing in Group E, and that's all the teams that finished at the bottom of their respective pools. Following this, we'll look at the countries who are advancing to the preliminary 2 stage, who are outside of the top 5 in terms of the world rankings, before taking a closer look at the top 5 nations. Finally, we're going to discuss the new changes to the rules, which will come into effect from January 2024, and how this will impact international competition going forwards. And if you need to catch up on any of the results, then do head to our social media pages. We unfortunately don't have time to cover each match in detail, but we have been doing some summaries for you on socials, so check those out. So, before we look at the teams, we would love to hear your guys' overall impression of the competition so far. So, Karen, we'll come to you first for this one. What are your thoughts on the quality of the performances you've seen from the first 3 days?
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed to be honest. I think, and maybe it's because now that I work with Scotland over the last cycle, I'm kind of paying a bit more attention to the teams that might appear in the kind of 6 to 12 rankings and those kind of at the bottom end of the competition. But I do actually think the standard of the whole competition is lifted, and even the teams that are going to kind of feature in that 13th to 16th playoff, I think have better technical skills, better structure than I've maybe seen in previous tournaments. So I haven't actually watched every single game. I've been trying to juggle, I'm sure like most people, juggle work, juggle childcare, and squeeze as many games in as possible. But yeah, that's my kind of overall opinion. I mean, we've still got the guys at the top that are a clear distance ahead, but I think the standard is improving across the board.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's been fantastic that we've had so many kind of closely contested pool games as well, a couple of upsets, a couple of near upsets. And I think you can see the impact of certain coaches going to ply their trade over in different countries as well. We've obviously got Bryony Akel for Tonga, and we've got Renger Bloxham for Wales. Anyone I've missed, Luce?
Rob Wright, Cappy Fellows is here, I think. There's so many.
So I think that kind of upskilling of the lower ranked nations is something that's really evident in the results so far. And Michelle, you've been in Cape Town for the start of the competition, and I'm sure you'll agree that the atmosphere here is amazing, particularly for the South Africa games. But really, all the African nations have very vocal representation in the stands. And we always talk a lot about how, for the players, they need to block out the noise of the crowd and just focus on the task at hand. But how difficult is it as an umpire not to get caught up in the emotions of the crowd? Michelle, I'll come to you for this one.
You're on mute, Michelle, in case you weren't aware.
Oh, no.
It's like Zoom days.
Oh, Michelle, can you hear us? Oh, I think she may have dropped out. We'll come back to Michelle. But Lindsay, obviously you've been watching along from home. What have you thought of the coverage?
Oh, I think it's been fantastic. Obviously, we were really lucky to have the Commonwealth Games in our home country last year, so we were kind of a bit spoilt. But I kind of agree with Karen that the standard has definitely raised. I think sort of the days of COVID and the after effects have definitely sort of been left behind. So it's great to see teams really excel and just say some phenomenal netball. Like, you know, people have been in camps for months, for weeks, for days. Some of these amazing athletes, you know, people are really coping with whatever time they've had or little time they've had together. And it's just super exciting to see netball at the forefront, especially as we're competing against another World Cup at the same time.
Yeah, of course. And I think there's been a really good amount of coverage online. I think a lot of the African nations have got on board in terms of sharing the news of it being here and following along. And I mean, the media sort of suite here is oversubscribed heavily, which I think is a first for a World Cup, really. So, Michelle, I think you're back with us now. I'll just loop back on that question about how difficult is it not to get caught up in the emotion of the crowd as an umpire?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I'm having a few internet issues here.
Don't worry.
In Cape Town. Yeah, look, I mean, I think it is a skill that you learn as an umpire when you're umpiring at elite level, and particularly at something like a World Cup where you're umpiring before a home crowd. Certainly in Liverpool at the last World Cup, I had a lot of England games, so I experienced the sort of, crowd swell behind a particular team quite often. I think that it is really important, though, that you keep focused on the task at hand and block out a fair bit of that noise. That said, I think we're kind of going a bit next level here with the crowds. They're very loud, very vibrant with the singing and tapping and clapping and everything. So it will be something that the umpires will need to be mindful of in terms of their own focus and concentration. And there are quite a lot of new umpires at this event as well. So I think that for them it will be a bit of a learning curve in managing those expectations.
Yeah, of course, and that's interesting actually that there's a lot of new umpires. I think that we often forget that umpires are also learning as well and need to be kind of improving and upskilling themselves as they go along. But looking at the teams who will be in Group E, and they'll be playing off for places 13th to 16th. So we have Singapore, Sri Lanka, Barbados, and Zimbabwe now confirmed. So which of these teams has impressed you? Karen, will come to you first. So that's Singapore, Sri Lanka, Barbados, and Zimbabwe.
Yeah, I think they've all impressed in their own individual way with their style. I think none of those teams have. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. They've all competed, especially with the team that is the next one up in terms of level within their pool. Sri Lanka had a really competitive game against Wales. Barbados against Scotland. I think Zimbabwe, if I'd have looked at that pool prior to the competition, I might have thought that they would finish in the top three in their pool. I saw them at the Diamond Challenge in South Africa when Scotland went out there in November last year. And they were really impressive. And I think maybe it's just been a really tough pool with kind of Tonga, Fiji and Zimbabwe in that group where they've all kind of had really closely contested games against each other. But I think they're one to watch for the future, but I was maybe surprised that they hadn't performed as well as I thought they might do.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I think it is disappointing from Zimbabwe, given how well they finished at the last World Cup. They beat Northern Ireland, finishing in 8th place, and now they'll be battling it out to take 13th at best. So really disappointing from them. But in terms of those other teams, I think Singapore did well, managing to keep the goal margin to just 10, the difference against New Zealand. Barbados won the second quarter against Scotland. Sorry for bringing that up, Karen. And Sri Lanka only lost 3 out of 4 quarters against Wales by just 2 goals. So it has been really interesting how those kind of lower ranked nations have competed, and I'm very interested to see how they go forward into the next stage. Luce has just reminded me that Zimbabwe rank 13th in the world, so if they can finish in that position, that obviously reflects their ranking, but I think they will be disappointed and will have hoped to have done a bit better. Michelle, I'll come to you. Any of these teams out of Singapore, Sri Lanka, Barbados and Zimbabwe that have impressed you so far?
I think firstly to Zimbabwe, one of the things about that pool that for me is important for everyone to remember is both Tonga and Fiji have had a lot of netball in recent past. There has been a Pacific Oz series which has been played consistently over the past 2 years, in which both Tonga and Fiji have competed. And so I think they have had quite a lot of netball under their belts, whereas for Zimbabwe, possibly not as much match play in terms of competitive international match play. And I mean, that may have been one of the factors that perhaps led to them just getting pipped at the post in some of those close games, particularly the game against Fiji, where, you know, that was a real arm wrestle. So, I mean, I would say that I think in patches they've actually been quite impressive, but they probably had a pretty tough pool, and, you know, possibly were unlucky not to end up slightly higher than they did. Barbados, I think, have had some really good patches of play. Certainly in the game against Scotland, they showed some real flashes of good play. And again, I think one of the challenges that some of these countries face coming into World Cup is just the consistency of international match play against teams of sort of a similar or higher standard, and that is that's really difficult for them to, I guess, come into these games and compete for 4 quarters on an equal level. But, you know, those teams go in with goals, specific goals against, you know, the top teams, and I'd say probably a few of those have been ticked off in these first 3 games. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare against each other.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching that as well. It's sort of like the little sub battle going on. You know, everyone's quite focused on the top nations, but there's all these really interesting little things going on as well with all the other nations.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
don't forget as well to get in touch. Yeah. What were you going to say, Michelle?
Sorry, I was going to say, and I mean, certainly from the point of view, from an umpiring point of view, when, you know, we do split into these pools and you have, you know, the groupings come together for these teams, you know, the ability to play for, you know, a higher ranking, even if it's 1 spot or 2 spots or whatever it may be, you know, for them it's like a gold medal game. And so as an umpire going into those games, it's really important to be respectful of that, the meaning that those games have for the teams. So while people might say, oh, well, you know, it's the bottom teams playing off, you know, for those teams, that's their gold medal. So, you know, as an umpire, you have to be really respectful of the fact that these are games that are really important to those teams and treat them the same way you treat a gold medal game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that respect across the board is so important. And don't forget, everyone, to get in touch with us using the hashtag NWC2023. Let us know what you think, what performances you've liked, any particular players that have stood out for you, and we'll try and do a few shout outs as well as we go along. So moving on to the next section, it's been confirmed that the 6 teams which will combine to form Group F will be Australia, Tonga, Fiji, England, Malawi and Scotland. And Group G will contain Jamaica, South Africa, Wales, New Zealand, Uganda and Trinidad and Tobago. If we put the top 5 to one side for now, because we're going to come back to them a little bit later on, out of the other nations in these groups, there's been some really impressive standout performances. So from Tonga, Fiji, Malawi, Scotland, Wales, Uganda and Trinidad, I know that's a long list, but have any players impressed you in particular? So Lindsay, we'll come to you first for this one.
I mean, we've got to start with Tonga, haven't we? The fact that they've got Qtr and, you know, Munyajera, just absolute legends and heroes of the game, stepping out onto court. And, you know, they're not disappointing on any level. It's a shame that they haven't quite managed to fulfill 4 quarters yet. But I think as a team, it's just electric to see those 2 back on court and what they can provide in skill set. And it still blows my mind. I'm just so grateful I don't have to play against her anymore. So especially with those crazy no-lip passes and over shoulder. But yeah, it's really exciting to see how Tonga's looking. And I think, you know, all of those teams are giving solid performances. I'm sure there's quite a lot of chat at the moment around some of those teams, especially some of the behaviours on and off the court. So I know there's quite a lot sort of behind the scenes. So it'd be interesting to see if anyone's got any info on that. But you know, it's great to see Uganda competing with New Zealand. Like, that was a fantastic game. Like, you know, Mary being Mary, just being phenomenal. Like, you know, it's just exciting to see what she can deliver in this next round. And, you know, the fact that Fiji did fight their way through Zimbabwe to get across, and, you know, Wales had some fantastic performances, and Scotland have really delivered like solid, consistent performances. And, you know, I played against a lot of these players in the Super League, so it's really pleasing to see that all the experience that they're gaining from Super League is emulating in their national teams as well, which is just, you know, it's fantastic to see netball going in that direction. I'm very intrigued to see how sort of the physical toll of the last games go on to some of the lower end teams where they don't have the privilege of an England or Australia, New Zealand, Jamaica, even South Africa, to have a rotation on the bench, as in you want to play your strongest 7 to perform the best. That doesn't necessarily mean you're playing all 5. So whereas England have had much more of a luxury to be able to use all 12 pretty much every single game, it'd be interesting to see sort of the toll. I know personally from playing, World Youth Champs and things like that, it's really difficult and it's really hard to keep everyone in one piece and at the same standard and performing in and out the whole time. So I'm looking forward to it.
No, I think you're totally right there. And you mentioned some of those Super League names that we obviously have playing with us. I think Hannah Layton and Neve McCall have been standouts for Scotland. Emma Love as well has come on really well. And I think we're seeing a few people who, I hope we see in the Super League moving forward. Nancy Cootie for Wales has been one to watch. And I've always loved watching Taekwondo Lawazi, although she has been nursing a little bit of a knee injury, the centre for Malawi. But I'll come to you then next, Karen. Any players standing out for you from those teams, sort of Tonga, Fiji, Malawi, Scotland, Wales, Uganda, Trinidad?
Yeah, I'm going to jump on one that Lindsay said and just talk about Mary Trollock, because I think there's obviously some outstanding shooters within kind of Australia, Jamaica, New Zealand, England ranks, but I think Mary is putting her hand up for the best shooter in the world, and if she would seamlessly slot into any of those top 4 teams, and with the injuries that they've had, Uganda, of the last season, I think they're doing phenomenally well, and I think we'll be right there. Kind of, they may not get into that semi-final spot. I don't think anybody would bet on that, but when it comes to a 5th, 6th playoff, I wouldn't write them off to kind of come up with a 5th place finish at this tournament. And it'll primarily be due to Mary.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think she, Mary is outstanding. I would say that also Margaret Bagala has been fantastic for Uganda. She was our mid-court pick in episode 3. She's had a few stats actually, Luce. Can you fill us in on those?
Yeah, her stats are absolutely crazy. I will say we do have to take the stats with a pinch of salt, because there have been some teething issues in terms of their accuracy. But assuming that they're as good as can be, Margaret's stats are absolutely wild. She's got the most goal assists of any player here. She's got the most feeds. She's played every single minute, and she's also got the most feeds with an attempt. So the placement of her feeds is absolutely top notch. So she is really just blowing my mind.
Yeah, I think she's been outstanding. I think there's quite a few mid-quarters actually that have really impressed me throughout the competition. And just looking at Fiji then before we move on, I think Una Raluni, the goal attack, has been a bit of a standout, and I'd love to see her picked up by a Super League. Oh no, she can't be, can she? Because of the eligibility.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be within a top 12 nation, I believe.
I believe it is, Karen, isn't it? Top 12.
Yeah, it is. You have to be a top 12 nation in the world to play in the Super League. And, we had this issue when I was working at Loughborough Lightning, and we had Peace Proscovia for the first year that I was there. And then they brought in the Home Office rule the year after. And the reason for the ruling is and it is directed from the Home Office to the governing body, to basically protect effectively the trade of UK-based sports people, and that they had to put in a rule in to almost make it, if you're going to bring in an import, they're going to be of one-off quality, which we had to go back to the Home Office and explain, because at the time Uganda were 13th in the world, and they weren't going to allow Peace to come back. And then they introduced a rule that if they played 75% of the previous season, they could also play in the Super League. So it's quite complicated, and it's really tough for your individual standout players in the lower nations that actually could compete. And for, the Home Office are taking this as a blanket rule, with maybe not understanding the nuances of netball, which is it's real positional specific. It can, it's not... I think it does sometimes impact on those players being able to come and play in the Super League.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because if my memory serves me correctly, Zimbabwe are currently ranked 13th. And obviously, Felicity Swanga, who we know and love from the Super League, I don't believe she's necessarily got that many minutes from the 2023 NSL season. So actually, will she be eligible to come back next year? Possibly not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, and I'm not 100% sure whether that 75% rule still exists. It may do, but I remember, because we were lobbying to keep peace in the Super League at that time, and thank goodness there was that kind of way in for her because they were 13th. But yeah, that might be the case. I'm not sure, and I think it might be if they've played a couple of seasons and they're established in the Super League that they can still play. But I'd have to go back to those Home Office rulings to double check.
Yeah, well, let's see if we can follow up on that with you, Karen, and let everyone know. That'd be amazing. Just a few people who've got in touch on either the hashtag or tweeting us directly. Dennis Tate Allen, hey, thanks for getting in touch. He said Daystar Swift, Afisha Noel and Chantel Seamungle have been real standouts. Mary went nuts on us tonight. Yeah, Mary's just absolutely outrageous.
Mary goes nuts on everyone every day.
Right. But for me, the leadership that she's showing in that attacking end, in the absence of the other shooters, is really just something incredible. And I think it's testament to how the NSL has helped to develop her as well. We've also had Mel Robinson, who's got in touch to say, I think Nancy Cootie is one to watch for the future. She's fearless, and could not agree with you more, Mel.
Yeah, she was one of our picks as well, wasn't she, Luce? And she's also very versatile, can play both shooter and goalkeeper.
Yeah,
so,
which I love.
Yeah, me too. That. It's really interesting and a very exciting prospect for Wales. So next up, we'll take a look at South Africa. So 2 wins for them and 1 loss to Jamaica with that disaster. 20-3 third quarter. It was actually 12-1 with 5 minutes left to go. And now, Michelle, I know you were watching this game. So what on earth do you think happened, and how does South Africa stop themselves from spiralling again?
Oh, look, I think in that game, Jodie-Ann Ward happened. That was a great change to move her into goal defence and switch her and LaTanya Wilson. Her footwork is just spectacular, Jodie-Ann Ward. And just, I think, having someone with those smaller steps, that different, I think, that different style of agility. I mean, LaTanya Wilson is great at the fly at the front, but in goal defence, that can often lead to overrunning. Whereas with Jodie-Ann, because she's just that bit more compact and agile with her footwork, she was really able to, I think, tie the South African shooters who had started so beautifully in that game, I think. And one of the things I think has been really exciting at this tournament is seeing the way that Norma is bringing, Elmia Vanderberg and Nicole Talliard through, and seeing how well they have stood up to this level of play. So they, I thought, came on and did a brilliant job in the first half, but then that defensive switch was a real masterstroke by Jamaica, and it paid dividends for them in that third quarter. So I guess, for them, part of it is that ability to adapt to a team change made by the opposition, and to, I guess, adjust their style of play more quickly to a different defensive style, and they just weren't able to do that fast enough.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, I've got my smug face on at the moment because it was the switch to put Jodie-Ann Ward back into goal defence and Wilson out into wing defence, which is what I said was my preferred Jamaican defensive lineup. And Lucy preferred the other way. So I'm feeling a little bit smug right now.
Okay, Luce, you can take this one, all right? You can take this one. I'll get the next one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on all counts, Michelle. I think that it was a little bit disappointing for South Africa to let it run away with them so much in that particular quarter. So, Lindsay, as a player, when you're down and the other team's just keeping to come at you, and you feel like you're on the back foot a little bit, how do you stop the game from running out of control?
I suppose you've got numerous tactics. I can always admit that I've had a few moments where you call time, you need to dry that floor, the infamous mop, just to catch a breather. Or maybe it's sometimes when a senior or younger players of the court just sort of look at the bench and go, you know what, we need a change, I'm going to take a responsibility. And sometimes that can be led by a coach, sometimes that's led by a player. And it's a difficult one because we're all super competitive and you want to feel that you're going to contribute and make a difference, and you'll have a moment to change, but sometimes you do definitely need to inject something different. But like you're saying about Jamaica's switch was just, stroke of genius, and it absolutely paid off. And sometimes you've got to have that sort of, belief in a 12. And, I've been in teams previously, in previous England teams, where they have not changed that 7 and we've lost dramatically. And you sometimes think, oh, maybe I could have a go. Maybe I could do something different or be unique on court. And they don't know how to, combat me. But it's really tough. It's definitely something that you feel you're in control of, as obviously we've got alternating centre passes. Like, you do have a duty of looking after that ball from a centre to get to goal, but sometimes you have to think outside the box. And I've been creative a few times. There's been a few holes in the floor, damaged bricks. There's a lot of, there's a dent spot, or, sort of those things. Sometimes you have to be a bit creative, and other times you can just do it by just sort of holding your hand up and being like, you know what, I've been in a team, I think Karen was there as well, when Sonia Baklova, called time and said, I need to come off, we need to have someone else on court. So it has happened. It's not unusual, and sometimes it just takes someone to step up and see something a bit more than what just is going on court at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what surprised me, there's one thing the players recognising that and sort of doing something on court themselves, but what surprised me was how late Norma left the changes. It wasn't until 5 minutes left of that third quarter that she then made a number of changes, and when we asked her in the post-match press conference why you waited so late, she said, I thought my players would be able to sort of get themselves out of it, and maybe just shows I think that possibly exposes the lack of time that they've had together, and really highlights the disparity of the preparation for the majority of the teams that are here. Like New Zealand, we know have had sort of 6 weeks together. Jamaica have had less than 2 weeks. So it really kind of highlights the different preparations that each team has had for me.
Yeah, and she also mentioned as well quite a lot about how the Jamaica side have a huge number of their players playing in SSN, 7 of the side playing in SSN, and South Africa don't have that at the moment. And I think it was just a little bit of that experience of playing in a very noisy venue with the crowd going, and being able to ride that wave and push through and still actually execute those basics well, that South Africa weren't quite able to do today. But I mean, it's not over for them. In order to make the semis now, I believe they would have to beat New Zealand, which I think is probably going to be quite a tough ask for them. Michelle, do you think they can do it?
Oh, look, I if they have a good enough day, possibly they can. I mean, there's a lot of talent in that team, and I really actually enjoyed watching their new talent come through. I think ultimately, though, it's the experience of New Zealand that will be likely to get them over the line. I know it's not as experienced a New Zealand team as perhaps we've seen in 2019, obviously, with the fossils, as they call them, with Langman and Coppola and Maria Folau. But at the same time, I think the exposure to competition is a really, the exposure to sort of high-level competition. And while you have some players from South Africa, obviously Carla Pretorius and Pumza Mweni, who have Lenise Potgieter as well, though obviously Lenise is carrying a bit of a niggle. I mean, she came on beautifully in the first half tonight. Didn't sort of keep going with it, but I mean, she did start very well. But yeah, look, I think they'll give it a really good crack, but I think New Zealand might just have a little bit too much for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, we saw Wales really push South Africa all the way as well, and sort of fairly below them in the rankings. So I think it will be too much of a stretch for South Africa, which is a real shame, obviously, given that it's being hosted here. But we've had Tabatsi Matlala get in touch on Twitter as well. So definitely agree with Michelle. Proteas did not adjust to those changes made in the third quarter, and that's what cost them. Feel as though they need to clean up and eliminate basic errors. You cannot have a high penalty count and expect to win against the top team. And actually eliminating that basic errors is something we're going to talk about a little bit later in relation to another team as well. So it seems to be a common thread throughout the Netball World Cup currently. We've also had Dennis got in touch again with a really, really funny tweet. I've been laughing my head off here. Said Jamaica came here to win this thing, and they didn't just come to shop for fridge magnets. They're going to go deep in this championship. Absolutely cracked me up, Dennis.
That is great. I don't think anyone came here to shop for fridge magnets, but that is absolutely hilarious there. Thank you guys for sending in those comments. So obviously South Africa, they have had a bit of a rough start to the tournament with this pool stage loss to Jamaica. But, it was always going to be difficult for them to get out of that pool. Looking at Jamaica then, they've had a clean sweep so far, 3 from 3. And if I'm honest, they haven't really shown an obvious weakness, and they seem to have all the ingredients required to go all the way. So, Karen, I mean, how do you stop Jamaica in their current form?
Wow, well, that's a $1 million question. I think, I mean, it is scary to see what a step up they've made from the Commonwealth Games as well. I think everybody was not necessarily pleasantly surprised, but pleased that Jamaica at the Commonwealth Games were more clinical than they've been in previous tournaments, seeming to have increased fitness levels, just more controlled on the ball, which was brilliant. And I think they've taken another step up this tournament. So whereas in previous kind of cycles and World Cups, you might have worked out how to get on top of their mid-quarters, how to get them to feed the circle early when they don't want to, and you would have targeted that area to win ball early before it gets too close to the circle and Janelle and Romelda get their hands on it. But I think it's cliche, but there's a full defensive effort there to really wear them down. So the likes of Australia will probably will be kind of looking at how their man-to-man marking style, but then also they've got some variations in their game now where they're playing a bit of box defence or where they're sitting in front aggressively, and the Kiwi zone, etc. So I think I personally think this is that they could win this tournament, which is really exciting for World Netball.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally love that. Sorry, any Australian fans listening. Sorry, Michelle. But I think it would be fantastic to then have had, I believe, the last 4 competitions won by different nations. Is that right, Luce? It would be if Jamaica won.
Australia and then England and New Zealand. Yeah, it must be. Yeah.
So that would be great. So we're all manifesting that here over at Qtr Time Pod HQ. But I mean, Janelle Fowler is obviously in sparkling form as always, 39 from 40 today at 97%. She just simply does not miss. And Lucy, you've got a couple of stats for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Janelle Fowler and Shamira Sterling until the cows come home. Like, we all know how sensational they are. But for me, I think a bit of an unsung hero of this Jamaican team for this tournament is actually Khadija Williams. I think it'll be interesting to see her fitness levels by the end of the tournament, because I think that has been a weakness of hers previously. But currently, she's looking really, really fit. She's actually second in the leaderboard for goal assist. She's third in the leaderboard for feeds into the circle. And I just think she's really just going about her business and is a bit of an unsung hero.
Yeah, that's interesting. And actually, Jamaica have almost the same squad that they had last year, with just one change, with Crystal Plummer coming into the side. So, they know each other really well. Obviously, that combination defensively, just won a premiership with the Adelaide Thunderbirds. But I suppose you could say as well that with Jamaica and with so many Jamaican players playing out in the SSN, that it could mean that the Aussies have had a really good look at them. And when they come up against them, they may know a few of their tricks. Lindsay, how do you think that will go? Do you think that that's a disadvantage to Jamaica in any way?
No, I don't think it will. I think if anything, that makes them just equally aware of their own opposition in Australia. Like you say, they are much more disciplined than the Jamaica I remember playing years and years ago, and they're only getting better. Like, it's just awesome to see the style of play that they're doing. It hasn't affected their natural Jamaican way of winning ball or keeping hold of ball. The phenomenal Janelle Fowler has been in SNN and previous to that ANZ before that for years, and she's still absolutely killing it for Jamaica. The separation of them and not having much time together isn't really showing. I mean, they are the only sort of playing South Africa has been the only real test like between two really, really strong top 6 contending nations. So it was interesting to see how dominant they really were, and not just from a goal shooter just capitalising every single pass from a long pass. They were just varying it up. They were doing different styles. They're winning ball all different places on the court. They weren't just relying on a one trick pony at the back of Shamira Sterling just turning over ball. It was a continued effort of the whole team. So, I just think, game on, bring it on. It's exciting to have netball in a position where we don't know who's going to win. It is awesome. Like, you could be betting left, right and centre. And, I'm passionate. I always want England to win. But if England can't win, I'd love a Jamaica to win instead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Absolutely, always England for the win. But we've had a message in from Jamaican in Seattle. Oh, Oyston Sinclair, welcome back. I remember you from last year. And run us through that, Luce.
Yeah, he said Sunshine Girls were on fire. They took no prisoners, and this was revenge from the last World Cup.
Oh, yeah, because
Spicy.
I thought it was interesting, actually, when researching for the World Cup, that Jamaica historically haven't actually performed as well at World Cups as they have at Commonwealth Games. So I think they're looking to right some of those wrongs this year. And unfortunately, one team that may be on the receiving end of that is England. So England have had a clean sweep so far, and their biggest challenge was against Malawi. But one of the key things that we've noticed from their game is that the general play turnovers. So we had a little look at this, and again, just remembering that these stats may not be 100% correct, but they'll give you a bit of an idea. So Australia and New Zealand both have 38 general play turnovers so far. Jamaica aren't far behind them with 42, and England are quite out ahead with 55. So England are looking at around an average of 18 per game, with the other three looking at around the 13 mark. So I suppose if you put that in real terms, obviously this doesn't work always this way in a game scenario, but that's 5 turnovers, approximately the difference, which could be about 10 goals.
And actually, looking at sort of specific players within that general play turnover stat, Nat Metcalfe and Liv Cheen are second and third, respectively, overall on the bad hands stat. And Nat Metcalfe again and Elle Cardwell are also in the top 10 for bad passes. So it's kind of danger signs, really, for England, I think.
Yeah, so Michelle, I'll come to you for this one as the non-England person on the call. So Aaron on Instagram asks, what have you thought about England's performance so far in the competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to tell, I think, in early rounds when teams are working on a rotation. I mean, Lindsay made the point before about having 12, how teams use their players in the early rounds, about resting and things like that. So there certainly has been quite a lot of rotation through the English line. So it is a little bit difficult, I think, to get a real impression of what they consider their strongest line to be. They do have, I think, the benefit of quite a lot of variety, particularly in their defence end. They have 4 defenders, all of whom offer quite different things, which allows you to take a bit of a horses for courses approach against different teams. So we'll be interested to see the lines that they pick against different opposition. And obviously, too, in terms of shooters, being from Australia, have seen a lot of Elle Cardwell and Helen Housby, both of whom have had fantastic seasons this year and been in really sparkling form. But obviously, they're not the only shooters that they have to rely on. They have Liv Cheen as well, and so therefore they do have something that they can swing in also. So for me, probably a little bit difficult to tell. I'll be interested to see what line they choose against a team like Jamaica. Or New Zealand, or whoever it is that they go to play next. And I think that will very much depend on the success, how those combinations come together, if they are going to take that horses for courses approach.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think they'll definitely be facing Australia. I believe that's not till Friday, actually. So
it might even be Thursday.
Maybe Thursday. So that's sort of getting towards the end of the week, which is interesting on how they'll manage that. But we've had a question come in from Debbie Ryan on Instagram, and she said, "What shifts in team selection will head coaches be making now we enter a different phase?" So, Karen, how do you think Jess Thirlby's mindset is going to change when it comes to that selection for the next games coming up?
Yeah, I think she'll now be trying to fine tune it. As you start to get into this next kind of combined pool, looking at players that she's probably going to use in a starting 7 moving forward and in those big games. So I'd expect a bit more consistency in the starting lineup, and then looking at specific changes to make impact, and that can still be to be resting legs, but you're looking at what are your 2 or 3 combinations that you're likely to run in some of the big games. So I think, I'd just expect a little bit more consistency in a starting lineup, and for her to have found out in these first 3 games actually who's on form, which connections are firing during this tournament, and then you can also link that in with the horses for courses against a different opposition.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting you mentioned the starting seven there, because we've had a question come in from Ryan, Ryan Allen, president of EMNA. Shout out to Ryan if you're listening. So, Lindsay, I'll come to you for this one. He's asked, who is your Roses starting seven against the Diamonds? And now I know we've seen a lot of different combinations, and many of these players you obviously have played with at London Pulse this season. But if you could name your starting seven for the Roses against the Diamonds, what would it be?
Just to put you on the spot.
Oh, I was going to say, did you have to pick me first? I mean, I'll start from the back. I think Jiva's actually had an absolute solid for the past few games. I think she's made a really good impact, and she definitely is our strongest goalkeeper. Not to say that Fran, Layla and Fumi can't play goalkeeper, but they definitely offer more at goal defence, and seeing Layla at wing defence has been phenomenal. So I'd pick Jiva at the back, then I'd pick my favourite Fumi at goal defence. I actually really like Layla at wing defence, so that's quite a hard one to pick. I think that's probably the position where we have lots of people putting their hands up and wanting to play. And then I'd probably pick Jade at centre. She's just so consistent. Wing attack's hard. I think Chelsea had a fab game today, and Nat's been really consistent, especially because she's been playing to so much goal attack. We'll probably go with captain, then Nat Nat Metcalf, and then goal attack Helen, goal shooter Eleanor Cardwell. Oh, that's hard to pick. First time.
Tough, isn't it? I think I probably am with you on most. I maybe would start Imogen Allison and then bring Jade on as an impact change to steady the ship. And actually, it's interesting about the wing attack position, because I felt that Nat today threw away a little bit of ball. Was it today or yesterday? They've all blurred into one. No, it was yesterday.
Both, actually.
Yeah, it was a little bit wasteful on occasion. What do you think, Luce?
I mean, for me, I don't think you can look past the form that Chelsea's in at the moment. Like, her game today was absolutely exceptional. I was completely blown away by her. So I know there were times during the Super League season where I was a little bit like, oh, should she be selected? Shouldn't she? Wasn't too sure. But I think the confidence boost that being selected has given her. Now the worry about, am I going to get selected or not, is out the way. She's in and she's having the time of her life. I think she's just really come into her own. And so I would probably start with Chelsea and wing attack.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? What were your thoughts on that, Luce? Lynn, sorry.
Oh, no, I totally agree. I love Chelsea. I thoroughly enjoy playing with her this season. And it's hard. I just think wing defence and wing attack are the two toughest positions for England to pick, where normally that's the position that you only have one option or only one person's sort of standing out. And I think that generally is the two positions that could make or break against an Australia or Jamaica or New Zealand, especially New Zealand, actually. They've got some dangerous wing defences. So you'd probably want a Chelsea up against them, and maybe Australia, who would their wing defence be? Or Ash Brad, who would you want against her? Maybe Nat has a bit more experience at the moment against her. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. What about you, Kaz or Michelle?
I'm the same backline as you, Lindsay. So I'd go Jiva, Fumi, Layla, and then I would start Imo, Nat, Helen, Ellie, and I'd start Imo to just go really hard early to use her athleticism. I think she's actually playing a really nice centre, and she's got so much better in the middle recently, especially considering she hasn't played much of the Super League this year. And then I would, a bit like you're saying, bring Jade on to steady the ship, and if we need to bring a level head to the game. And I think it's tough for Nat, because I actually think the way Nat plays the game, a lot of the play goes through her. So it'd be interesting to see a lot of the stats around some of the errors in terms of the actual volume of possession she takes. And I think she does take a lot more ball compared to Chelsea. And I think it's just because of the slight difference in their style of game. But I'd still start Nat, and with Chelsea in good form, that's a good experienced head to bring on.
Yeah, a couple of comments come in from this one. Luce, do you want to run us through those?
Yeah, an interesting one from Mel Robinson. She said, for me, the wing A choice depends on the shooting circle. I think Nat hasn't figured out Liv yet. So if Liv is in goal shooter, then Chelsea's your best bet. And with a Cardwell Housby in the shooting circle, then Nat should be starting wing attack, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, no, and that would make sense, obviously, with the Chelsea Pulse connection with Liv. I really like that comment as well. What are we calling Cardwell and Housby?
Cardsby. How's well?
Oh, Helenor. I saw it on Sky Netball. Helenor is pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, we love one of those. But we've spoken about England for a little while now, so we're going to move on to New Zealand. So New Zealand have won all 3 of their pool games as expected, and they've rotated their combinations really nicely. I've been impressed with New Zealand. I wouldn't say they've blown me away, but I think that it was pretty similar at the last World Cup. They sort of went about their business a little bit and then were like, surprise! So, yeah, I think maybe we need to be on guard for that. What are your thoughts, Luce?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that at times they've been ever so slightly underwhelming, but this is by their very, very high standards. So, maybe take it with a pinch of salt. But what I find interesting is that Knowles has kind of gone for a different lineup almost each quarter, whereas Stacey has gone for different lineups for each half. So I wonder sort of the balance between testing different combinations, but then also giving people really solid court time together in one combination. And I think 2 different approaches are very, very stark and really interesting.
Yeah, and that kind of links in with a question that we've had around combinations for the Silver Ferns. So Yoon on Instagram asks, what is Knowles' master plan for jury at wing defence? A repeat of 2019 with Rore, or just trying new combos, or just trying to limit other teams from getting too much intel on their business end plans? So Michelle, what are your thoughts? Kelly Jury at wing defence, why is Knowles doing it?
Well, look, I don't think I would make the Katrina Rore comparison. I think they're very different styles of player, and I think what Knowles is looking to get out of Jury at wing defence, as opposed to the role that Rore played there, is quite different. Rore is such a hard tagging player in terms of just would just track her opponent, keep her opponent in a space. I think that Jury's obviously the advantage that they're seeking to get out of Jury there is the height option. And particularly with certain teams, if you're playing against a team such as Jamaica, for example, where, the aim is to get the feed, obviously the high feed into Janelle, you want a pass that's going to be a little bit off the beam. While obviously Jury back against Janelle would be one option, if they are looking at a different defensive combination, having some big hands over that feed in may be worthwhile, may give you a point of difference. I don't know that I think it would be an effective option against Australia, because I can't see, with the style that Liz Watson plays, particularly with the level of ball carrying that she does, I just can't see that Jury would be able to have the speed and have the recovery from the hands over to have an impact on Liz Watson. And I just kind of feel that that's probably not the matchup. Possibly it's something for Jamaica. Or possibly it's just a red herring. Who knows?
You can never tell. But I actually think, I don't know about it, because while the hands over pressure is horrifying if you're a small wing defence like I am, small wing attack like I am, but actually she doesn't have the speed, and I think that Karen Berger is your danger mouse, I was going to say, but danger zone in wing defence for New Zealand, because of how much she provides.
Yeah. Certainly, I think if you're looking at a Rore style wing defence, she's the one who could play that sort of a role. So I guess it's just about what the job that Knowles is looking for her to do is. What the bigger picture is. So yeah, certainly I wouldn't be looking at that change in isolation. It is part of a bigger picture in terms of defence strategy.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Michelle. And actually, going back to the height comment, I took a really funny picture from the Singapore game earlier. I felt so sorry for the poor wing attack. The height difference was absolutely incredible. It must have been a good head, if not more. So if you want to see it, the wing defence of all wing attacks nightmares, go over to our Instagram story and have a quick look. But Karen, what are your thoughts on this choice? Because when we spoke to Kelly, she said it wasn't her choice, it was something that Knowles suggested.
Yeah, it doesn't really surprise me with Knowles, and I think exactly what Michelle's saying. Knowles will have planned every scenario, and they'll know that they would likely, in this second stage, face Jamaica, and she'll want to have more options there. And New Zealand are renowned for shifting circle defenders out to wing D to just create a bigger presence in the zone as well and get more ball lifted. So they did it with Anna Scarlett, Anna Harrison, a little while back, and I remember playing against her, and it was just awful. You're just trying to get the ball around the arms. And when you were lifting it over, you couldn't do it with enough touch because it was just going to go too high, and then the back defenders would come flying through. So I think it's really smart of her. A bit like Michelle said, I don't think it'll be an option they'd use against Australia, or maybe even England against a Metcalf. They'll use a Berger or a Heffernan. But she was getting a lot of hand on the 3-foot mark as well, not only setting up a load of ball for Carricker and Watson to come out on today. So it'll be interesting to see where she uses it in the latter stages.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that's just occurred to me when you think about that Jamaica-New Zealand matchup is obviously Rob Wright is part of the coaching group for Jamaica, who coaches in New Zealand against many of these players. So Yvonne has written in to say, hi Yvonne, she said, it's undeniable the influence quiet genius Rob Wright has had on the Sunshine Girls defensive unit, a masterstroke of coaching recruitment by Netball Jamaica. He's shared the sacrifices he's had to make, what can be done to support coaching development internationally. I'm not sure we have time to answer that question, but we will come back to that another day, Yvonne. But a really interesting talking point to think about. Just moving on then to Australia before we talk about the rule changes. So Australia looking extremely thick, and their ball speed has been so impressive. So I'm pretty proud of this question. Lindsay, who's shining for the Diamonds?
Oh, I mean, is it possible to say that they all, that's what's quite amazed me about the Australian team, is that they are very consistent, but all across the board. Maybe I'm being really boring and being on the fence, but I genuinely have been impressed with the fact that they have had a limited time together, considering obviously, they have had maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks to prepare or something ridiculous like that in between sort of finishing their SNN and then playing. So I've been quite impressed how consistent they've been. I love seeing the mix up in defence. That Bruce, as much as she is a character, I love watching her. And I love watching Aria Sunday as well. Just that back line and Ash Browse and all that. So I love their defence. They're tenacious. They work hard. I wouldn't want to be an attacker trying to get rid of away from those guys. So yeah, I'd be team defence for Australia.
Yeah, definitely. And Courtney Bruce, one of the names that you've mentioned there, we can't look past her. In terms of the stats, she's top for intercepts. She's third for deflections resulting in the game. She's top for deflections overall. She's top for gains. She's
smashing it.
unbelievable. And she's not even played all of the minutes. So that's taken into account that she's, resting for some quarters. It's just nuts.
Yeah, I think
how dare she?
I know any combination that Australia put out, it seems to be extremely horrifying for the opposition. And Michelle, any particular standouts for the Diamonds for you?
Oh, look, I'd have to agree with Lindsay. I think that across the board, they've actually been, remarkably consistent. They look, to me, they look very calm. They look in control. There's a very clear game plan in each of the matches that I've seen them play where they've gone out, and I think the execution has been really top notch. It's hard to find a weakness in there. I guess that coming into these next games, they have some sort of, I think, very specific challenges against their sort of fellow top 4 or 5 teams, and that I think will be a test. Certainly against Jamaica. There was mention before about how clearly there are a lot of Jamaican players now playing in SSN, the impact that's had, how it's helped their combinations. But again, there's sort of, mutual intel there is part of that too. So there will be a very clear game plan for Jamaica. Stacey Marinkovic has obviously coached Chanel Fowler at West Coast Fever prior to becoming the Diamonds coach. So I think there will be a really specific game plan around knowledge. It's just about whether Jamaica's going to make that easy to do, because you have some players there in amazing form. Playing against New Zealand, on the other hand, I think there's an understanding of general style, but a lack of sort of more day-to-day familiarity with the players. So again, it will be, about the plan, but also about the execution.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, and obviously the series that Jamaica were due to play against New Zealand, they didn't have their full strength squad. In fact, they didn't have much strength in the squad. They were sort of reaching for some previous players and things like that to get that competition away. So it means that New Zealand haven't had a bit of a look at them. Unfortunately, we are going to run slightly over time. If anyone needs to go from our speakers, please do let us know. But we just did think it would be a great opportunity to talk about the rule changes that are coming into place. So obviously, Michelle, sticking with you, you are part of the Rules Advisory Panel, and the new rule changes were approved at the World Netball Congress a couple of days ago. And as I mentioned before, they'll come into effect from January 2024. So in summary, substitutions will be allowed at any time during the match. Cautions have been removed, allowing umpires to give proactive advice before escalation to a warning or suspension. Before finally ordering a player off court should further action be required. Under the new rules, umpires will be able to advance a sanction up to a third of the court and escalate a free pass to a penalty pass if required. The advantage rule has also been adapted to allow the game to flow without compromising control or player safety. And finally, other rule changes affect a new definition of the short pass rule, scoring a goal in the closing seconds of play, which I think probably most people are pleased about, and a new process for simultaneous infringements. So we won't have time to run through all of these today, but there were two that we wanted to pick out. And the first one was on the cautions, and the second one is on the short pass rule, which is actually something that we've seen New Zealand use a lot. So looking at that change, for the short pass rule, that will have a big impact on how the game is played, particularly in the shooting circle. So Karen, I'll actually come to you first. What are your thoughts on the incoming changes?
Oh gosh, I probably should have had thought about this in advance. I think I am pleased that there's going to be a bit of a change to the short pass rule, because I think at the minute, and I'm saying this from an attacking perspective, but there's almost a bit of a get out of free jail card a little bit for the attackers, where you kind of get really close to somebody and then they just drop it on the floor and a defender can't get in between it. So it's a real, I think it's really hard for the defenders at this moment in time. So I'm quite happy with an adjustment to that rule.
Yeah, and Lindsay, as a defender yourself, how much of an impact do you think that short pass rule will have in the shooting circle?
If I'm being honest, I'm glad I'm out now. If I'm being honest, I think it's going to be quite dramatic for defenders, and it will take quite a lot of adjustment to sort of reapply what we can do to get it. I think more of the thing as a defender, the caution and the escalation is going to be really difficult. Like, someone like Courtney Bruce, who is a character on court, what do you, I'm more concerned about that as a defender than necessarily the short pass personally. But I do think it's going to be confusing for a while.
Yeah, I think it will take a bit of getting used to. But talking then about those game management changes. There's already been a fair few cautions and warnings handed out at the World Cup so far. Malawi received 2 warnings in the game against England in particular. So, Michelle, can you talk us through the new warning and suspension process and how it will work in practice for umpires?
Okay, so I guess the first thing to say is, in some ways, the warning and caution, the warning and suspension process is not that new. But the big change, obviously, is that we are no longer having cautions. So the feedback that we received, so the way that, just I guess by brief way of background, the way that the rules review works is that we have a major rules review every 8 years. All countries around the world, as well as other stakeholders, are asked to give us submissions about things that they think are working, things they think aren't working, and to propose changes. And one of the big pieces of feedback that we received around game management was that cautions weren't effective, that cautions had sort of deteriorated into this sort of, finger wagging, nagging exercise that players sort of found annoying rather than helpful in terms of adjusting behaviour, and that there was often not follow through on them. So you would have a situation where a player was given informal advice about adjusting what they were doing, then they would get a caution, then they would do it another 6 times and nothing would actually happen. So it was something that we felt was kind of creating a tone in the game that was not really desirable for the sort of modern game that we want, which, is obviously an exciting physical aerial game played by strong, fit, powerful athletes. And I guess to move away from perhaps a more old-fashioned image as a schoolgirl game where the umpires are nagging at the players. So instead of cautions, we still will have proactive advice, which is where an umpire can say to a player that, they need to be mindful of a particular infringement. So, for example, if a player has obstructed consistently in the same place, the umpire may say you need to adjust your distance. If a player is consistently going offside, they may say you need to stay on side, something like that. So, short, direct, to the point, but to get an adjustment in player behaviour. So that will still stay. What will replace cautions is that the umpires now have the capacity to advance in a situation where you do have something like a persistent infringement or an intentional infringement, whereas under the previous rules, advancing was only allowed in instances of delay. So if there was an intentional infringement to delay play, such as an intentional obstruction outside the circle, for example, to stop a pass going in, yes, you could advance that. But otherwise, persistent and intentional infringements were actually not capable of being advanced. So we now have advancements for that, and also the ability to escalate. So, for example, for a persistent offside, that can be escalated from a free pass to a penalty pass to allow the player to shoot. So that sort of is the next step after the informal advice. However, I suppose one thing that's important to highlight is that we had a really big player safety focus in this rules revision. And as a result of that, in terms of dangerous play, which has been sort of more precisely defined, we are now going straight to warnings and suspensions. So in terms of play, that does endanger player safety, in particular aerial play, so failing to yield landing space to a player in the air, and contact that results in head or neck contact by a player with another player, or with the court, or with the post. We're looking at that now more seriously.
Okay, that is really interesting, and thank you, Michelle, obviously for your insight on that, because I think it will take a little while for people to adjust to the changes, and it's really interesting to hear the actual rationale behind why they've been brought in as well.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's quite easy to see the sort of headline for something and be like, oh my God, there's no cautions, like this is really massive change to our game. But actually hearing the thought process and the logic behind it is really fascinating. So thank you so much, Michelle.
So we have gone a little bit over, but I'd love to get your guys' predictions for the World Cup final placings, if that's okay. So Lindsay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Quick predictions for gold, silver and bronze medals.
Poor Lindsay, we've done that twice.
I know, sorry, Lindsay.
Sorry.
I was going to say that. I don't take it personal, Lucy.
We are coming to you next, Michelle, but you get some thinking time.
Oh gosh. I think I'll be controversial.
Do it.
New Zealand, England, Jamaica, Australia.
Wow, Jamaica out in that order?
Maybe.
Yeah. It's so hard. It's honestly impossible.
Was that from gold to bronze or bronze to gold?
No, I think New Zealand will get the gold again. I think
gotcha.
they're doing the same thing again. They look fierce. They've had lots of time together, so I definitely think they're the ones to beat. And I was just trying to calculate in my head who could theoretically then come if New Zealand and Jamaica are in the same pool. Could they still get to the finals? I think
so, because of the crossover. Yeah, so it could then be, it would be that Jamaica would play either Australia or England, and then whoever wins that one would go in.
I'll change it. So I think so it'll be New Zealand, Jamaica, England, Australia.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we'd love people to tweet in as well to let you know, to let us know what you think, using the hashtag NWC2023. And Michelle, okay, you've had a bit of time to think about it now. Who are you going for?
I'm glad I got the thinking time. Look, I actually think that for Jamaica, it's now or never. I kind of think this is their moment. So I think they'll play off for gold, and I think they may very well win. So my prediction is probably Jamaica. And then I would say Australia will win silver, because I think Australia will get through to the final. So I think the final will be Australia, Jamaica. And I think that Jamaica might just pip them this time. And then for bronze, I think it will be New Zealand. I think New Zealand will come in over England.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a completely different one. But I mean, how great is that? And I think probably have got different ones to those as well. That it really could be any combination of those top 4 teams. Lucy, you had a couple of comments come in.
So just to quickly go back to the rules, we've got a message from Sarah Kilman, Mr. who said, it's so great having Michelle on to discuss this topic. The clarity from someone so close to the rules process is great. Lucy Barrett says, yes, Lindsay, backing my Silver Ferns on Qtr Time pod. So you got a big fan there. Lots of great stuff coming in.
Amazing stuff. Well, I'm sorry for going a little bit over time, but just a huge thank you, Lindsay, Michelle, and Karen, who's had to sneak away, for bringing us all the insight and sharing your expertise as well from 3 very impressive, illustrious netball careers. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Huge thank you to our guests again for giving up their time. Thank you to everyone who sent in a question. Do keep your thoughts coming in. We love hearing from you guys, so do get in touch. And our next live podcast will be Thursday, 3rd of August at 2 p.m. South Africa time, which is 1 p.m. in the UK. So do set your reminders for that. And the guests for that one will be announced shortly. But just a final thank you so much, Lindsay, Michelle, and everyone for listening.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Qtr Time Podcast.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the 2023 Netball World Cup and which players stood out for you.
Finally, we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to the pod, please do let us know, and do spread the word with your netball pals so that even more people can get involved. Don't forget as well to take advantage of our exclusive 15% discount until the end of August with Lovell Netball by entering the code NETPOD15 at the checkout at lovellnetball.co.uk. Take care everyone, and see you soon. Bye!
Bye!